Hello, I'm Dr. Mark Andrew Holowchak, and again I come to you from my hermitage in Lynchburg, and Thomas Jefferson scholar, historian, and philosopher, and I'd like to talk to you today about Jeffersonian historiography, or how, more specifically, how we read Jefferson, what we get from Thomas Jefferson, what we want from Thomas Jefferson. Now, Merrill Peterson, who in my estimation was the great Thomas Jefferson Foundation scholar at University of Virginia, who succeeded Dumas Malone, the other great scholar, wrote this fantastic book, The Jefferson Image in the American Mind. And the thesis in many respects is that we appropriate Thomas Jefferson for our own needs, scholars among us as well, that many scholars and many people are not so concerned with what Jefferson actually said and wrote, but with interpreting Jefferson in such a way that we get the Jefferson that we want to suit our own needs. And, I think the thesis, it never moved me all that much, but it has had a tremendously tremendous influence, I should just say, to make it more simple, on Jeffersonian scholars throughout the years. Pete Onuff, especially, in his 2007 The Mind of Thomas Jefferson, comes up with this, what I consider to be ridiculous thesis that we cannot know Thomas Jefferson because he was the perfect chameleon. He wrote to everybody in such a personalized way that religionists in a religionist way, and atheists in a way that suited the atheists, and so forth and so on. But he pandered to the interests of his correspondents in such a way that we cannot know Jefferson. All we can know, the best we can do as an historian, is construct a possible Jefferson, and that is a Jefferson that accords with I suppose he would mean the dictates of logic. Given the examples of the sorts of narratives that he embraces, one would say there's a qualification, and that is, we want to bring Jefferson down to earth and make him a human being, but we cannot say anything all that nice about Thomas Jefferson. And Pete Onuff has been doing that all of his life. He's really never come out and said anything positive about Jefferson, other than that he was a brutish slave owner, a racist, and so forth. His last book, he's a little softer still, but he doesn't really have anything positive to say. He never really writes on Jefferson's tremendous contributions to American culture, to global science and things like that, to the things that he's even done for Virginia. But what do we want from Thomas Jefferson? I'm going to read to you from a very short paper I recently published, which has had a surprising reaction. And I argue in the paper, it's titled something like, "Did Thomas Jefferson have sexual relations with slave Bob Hemmings?" And Bob Hemmings was, when Hemmings was young, he was Jefferson's right-hand man. He was his go-to young man, whether he would do all the personal things for Thomas Jefferson. And at some point, Bob Hemmings falls in love with a woman named Dolly, who lives in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and Bob Hemmings, tells Jefferson he wants to move away. So Jefferson frees him reluctantly in 1794, so he writes to Daniel L. Hilton on February 5, 1792, about finding someone to replace Bob. And I'll read to you the important part of that letter. Jefferson writes, "Having occasion for a servant boy who can shave, dress, and follow me on horseback, and none such being to be had here, I have thought of a small French boy, Joseph, who came from Europe with Mr. Skipwith, lived some time with Mr. Randolph, my son-in-law, and is now with a barber in Richmond. I will thank you to engage him to come to me immediately. The wages of such a boy here are $4 or $5 a month generally. I would propose to give him 5, 6, or even 7, but not further, nor indeed so far if you can get him more reasonably. He will be fed and lodged and have a livery, and it'll be, come on, Jeff, it'll be expected that he should be aiding to do everything in the house. I will moreover pay his passage in the stage, to which, if you find it necessary, you may add a moderate and fixed stipulation for his subsistence on the road. I wish him to come on immediately and will ask information from you as soon as you find whether he will come or not. Now, I facetiously, and I thought in this paper that my playing around with the letter, I talk about that Jefferson uses the imperative. He says, engage him to come to me immediately. And the desiderative, his desire, I wished him to come on immediately. And I say, well, both of these, the word come at the time has the same, meaning, double meaning that it has for us today. So he says, so this could be suggestive of Jefferson's swollen sexual passion for the young boy. Jefferson also notes that the normal wages are $4 to $5 a month. He's going to pay him up to, what does he say, up to $7, right? So again, a salary too is swollen. Jefferson adds he is to do everything in the house. What does that mean? So, and that suggests not just that he has certain functions, but whatever Jefferson asks him to do, this young boy is going to have to do. Is Jefferson suggesting that the boy will have to be at his sexual beck and call? And he says there's the last bit concerning whether the boy will come or not. Jeff, you just have to be in the picture, don't you? Okay, so the language is clearly suspicious. There's one could, if one wants, to take the letter to Hilton in a sexually suggestive way. Jefferson really wants this boy to come, and Jefferson has, perhaps with Bob, Jefferson had a sexual relationship with Sally's half-brother Bob, and he wants to have sex with this young boy as well. So that's suggestive that Jefferson may have had sex with Bob, Sally Hemings' half-brother. And, I write this tongue-in-cheek, and I say, of course, the letter can be taken that way. But the letter need not be taken that way. And that's the key point. We don't have to take it that way. Do we want to take it that way? Because it can be interpreted that way. But that's typical of what I think Jeffersonian scholars do today. They refuse to take Jefferson at his word. They want to take Jefferson in a way that accords with their own interests. The revisionist, postmodernist writers on Jefferson, go buddy, you gonna go? The revisionist, postmodernist writers, read through, they deconstruct Jeffersonian prose, which is something I think is so frickin' dangerous. Take Jefferson at his word. All these paradoxes in quote-unquote contradictions, and people use the word contradiction, don't know what a contradiction is. Contradiction is one sentence that denies another sentence. It's a conjunction of the two. If I say it's sunny outside in Lynchburg at noon, and it's not sunny outside Lynchburg at noon, that we have a contradiction. So I have a conjunction, a denial of the two conjoined in a statement, which expresses a statement that is impossible of being true. Necessarily has to be false, right? A statement of the form A and not A. So again, that's one point people misuse. They use the word contradiction all the time in scholarship without even knowing what the word means. So we have this problem that people take Jefferson any way that they want. The revisionists, progressivists, and postmodernists take him in a way where they deconstruct what he wants to say. They put his prose, they construct arguments in such ridiculously flimsy ways that we can get whatever we want out of Thomas Jefferson. That's what people take, I think, from this book, The Jefferson Image in the American Mind, like Pete Onuf says, there is no real Jefferson. We can interpret it any way we want to construct a possible Jefferson. And a possible Jefferson, logically speaking, is just one that is not impossible, that doesn't, we're constructing in a narrative of Jefferson, we don't come up with a logical inconsistency, a logical contradiction, okay? Which is not much of a demand for crafting narratives. Now, I want to add something about my own views. I mean, so my view in this paper that I had recently published as a blog came under somewhat violent attack by people saying that, oh, this person, Holowchak, is advocating that Jefferson now was a homosexual. So in addition to him having had sex and children by Sally Hemings, something I vehemently deny in my writings, it just never happened, these people saying now Holowchak is in advocacy of Jefferson having sex with Sally Hemings' half-brother Bob. So one person says, well, I'll never read anything Holowchak writes again. And another writes, well, does it really matter whether they had sex or not? Let's get back to, Jefferson's political views. Now, I want to add something to that. What if it turns out, this of course is not true, but what if we were to find out that Jefferson, had been homosexual, that he did have sex, let's say, with Bob Hemings, with some document came up and offered us, materially concrete and persuasive evidence that Jefferson was homosexually inclined or bisexually inclined, and he did have sex with Bob Hemings, one of his slaves. Am I, as a historian, to turn a blind eye to that because it's not the sort of Jefferson I want? As I often say in the One Word, 5 Questions with Donna Vitek, my job as an historian is just to offer you a picture of Jefferson insofar as I can reconstruct a picture of Jefferson that is true to the actual Jefferson. My job is not to give you the Jefferson you want. And that comes out, I think, abundantly in my writing on surprisingly simple religious views of Thomas Jefferson, American Messiah, that came out with recently. And a lot of people who haven't really read the book know of my views on Jefferson religion. Jefferson did not believe Jesus was the Son of God. He did not believe in the triune God. There could only be one God. There couldn't be, he thought, because it was a logical inconsistency. 3 distinct gods, but yet these distinct gods make up one distinct Godhead, one particular God. Jefferson thought that made no sense, and I tend to agree with him. It makes no sense. Did not believe Jesus rose from the grave. Did not believe Jesus in miracles and other things like that. They also want to say that Jefferson was not anti-sectarian religion, which I have argued, I think, rather cogently that he was. The argument being that Jefferson had friends who were religious clerics from various denominations, which he did, that he attended church often, which someone who doesn't think highly of sectarian religion shouldn't do, and that he often donated money to various religious denominations, which he did, so large sums of money. It's a very simple explanation for that, is that Jefferson thought that even within the various sectarian religions, you had ministers who were very highly moral people and had some very wonderful views of sermons and things like that could teach their parishioners about how to live a good, happy life, how to model their lives after Jesus. And Jefferson certainly believed Jesus was the most important moralist in the history of the world. He believed in patterning and modeling his life after Christ. So a lot of people personally have expressed sort of revulsion to my own views of Thomas Jefferson on religion, mainly people from the religious right, because Jefferson doesn't come out to be the sort of person they want him to be. They want him to be someone who performed a miracle, someone who was the Son of God and who believed in an afterlife and so forth. And that's not what Jefferson says when you read him carefully. right? So the picture I have constructed of Jefferson, and with respect to his religious beliefs, doesn't seem to accord with other people. What are you doing, boy? And so a lot of people sort of reject the view that I have constructed. Now, my view has always been, well, if you don't, if you're going to condemn what I have to say about Jefferson and religion, for example, read the book first. People haven't read my book. They'll ask me what I think about Jefferson's views, and I tell them succinctly, but they haven't read the book and looked at my arguments, which speaks to another thing I want to address rather briefly before I end. It is, as we see in history today, as we see in academic institutions, what are you doing? He's jumping up in the air. Come on, get up here. Here he comes. He's got to be here. We don't see concern for, I was watching Ayn Rand, not that I'm a big fan of Ayn Rand, but one of the things she talked about reminded me of my college education as an analytic philosopher, both at Wayne State University and University of Pittsburgh, was the emphasis on use of reason to solve our problems. And as an analytic philosopher, a person who agonizes over the meaning of words in sentences, agonizes over the meaning of sentences and the meaning of theses in books and things like that, I very carefully look at how people word things and and I take them literally. I think you have to do that because words don't have, indefinitely large meanings. They have very specific meanings for the most part. And when we put them together in sentences, the sentences have distinct meaning. I mean, in spite of what progressives or relativists will say, if that was not the case, we could not communicate with each other through language. The very fact that we communicate with each other very effectively most often means that when I say something, you know what I'm saying, and when you say something, I know what you're saying. And so my thing has always been to take Jefferson literally. And I think when you do that, we don't come across these inconsistencies and contradictions and whatever people call or have to say about Jefferson. That's the way to do scholarship anyways. To take things literally, to take Jefferson at his word, to take anyone at his word. And when you decide not to, one has to construct an argument for saying, why shouldn't we take Jefferson at his word? Now, Jefferson at times dissembled when it came to his religious views. And there was good reason for that, because the views that he endorsed would have, if they had been made public during, say, his presidency, would have caused him undue harm, right? Jefferson did not believe three gods in one, so he was an unconventional Christian. He was a Christian, as he often said, in the only way anyone should be a Christian, and that following the teachings of Christ. Love God with all your heart, and love your fellow human beings. And in other words, to behave morally. That's what Jefferson thought Jesus taught us. And I think that's true to the gist of what Christ was trying to teach. So that in itself, I think, I regard with great regret the lack of concern for use of rationality when doing scholarship today, when writing history. And that could only have, as it's already having, large inimical effects on the young generation of kids who are going through the colleges today, who don't read the textbooks, who don't even buy the textbooks. I know I've been teaching when students didn't buy recommended books, and they just told me that they refused to do so. And people in the philosophy department, which I was at the time, said, well, it's okay, they're not going to do it. And unbelievable to me that okay, we can pass somebody, or they don't have to read the book, they don't have to know what they're doing, and yet we're going to give them a passing grade. It's complete relativism, it's complete consumerism that we're competing for students at an institution, and if we don't make those students happy, they're going to go to another institution, put their money there, And if, the more students say a philosophy department gets, the more robust that department is, healthy in terms of its the materials for its existence. It's more money in the department, the more professors it can have, adjunct professors and so on, the more majors it can have. So we're in, that's not how you do philosophy. That's not how you do history. The idea is to be honest and truthful. And I think we want people in philosophy departments. We want young men and women who major in philosophy, for example, because they find it enriching, self-enriching. They find the learning philosophy makes them better persons on the whole. So anyways, that's sort of my bitch fest for today, the day after the Super Bowl. And again, I think following Peterson, I'll end by saying, when you read Peterson carefully, he's not arguing for Jefferson like Ono thinks Jefferson is inaccessible. He's arguing that there's a real person behind the words. And he is accessible. It's just damned hard. What makes it hard is that, and I've said this before, Jefferson had numerous interests. He was an archaeologist. He was a meteorologist. He studied just about everything. He was a philologist. He was a philosopher, an ethicist, a religionist, a farmer, a lawyer, and a politician. He was so many different things, and not trivially. He was not dilettantish in all of these things. He was very well schooled in so many things. And so the scholar who wants to be a genuine Jefferson scholar has to be well schooled in all the things in which Jefferson well schooled. And that's a daunting task. You need to know ancient Greek, you need to know Latin. It would be helpful to know French and other languages, Italian, to which Jefferson had access and had some expertise. And more than that, as my new book on Jefferson on Notes in Virginia is coming out soon, one needs to know a heck of a lot about the history of science. It helps to have read Newton, to have read Bacon, to have read the ancient moralists, Aristotle, Plato, Seneca, Tacitus, and Livy, the historians, and things like that, Homer and Hesiod. And most scholars, and the moralists of Jefferson's day, for example. Jefferson was a dyed-in-the-wool moralist. Historians neglect that. I think if you neglect that part of Jefferson, you'll never be able to understand Jefferson's political views. I've said that with Donna Vitek on a couple of occasions. But anyways, it's just, look, let's demand rationality back in scholarship, that we read things literally, that we interpret things literally, and only push towards a non-literal interpretation, trying to get at the surface meaning when literal interpretation doesn't give us any sort of fruitful results. That's what I want to say. So let's look for the real Thomas Jefferson, demand the real Thomas Jefferson, instead of following the woke currents that are out there. Construct a woke Jefferson. He's the racist, he's the hypocrite, he's the bigot, and start with that. Cherry pick for evidence in favor of that, and construct your narratives. Bullshit. Let's do away with that. Go back to the great scholarships that we had with Peterson and Malone and other people earlier time, and then we can move ahead again and start more progressive understanding of who Thomas Jefferson was. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this little informal talk on Jeffersonian historiography and the right way to do history.